President Donald Trump announced Friday that he is ending all trade talks with Canada in response to what he described as an egregious digital services tax that Ottawa plans to implement starting Monday. Calling it a direct and blatant attack on our country, Trump took to his social media platform to slam Canada's decision to move forward with the tax, which targets technology firms, both Canadian and foreign, that engage with online users in Canada. Under the new law, tech giants like Amazon, Google, Meta, Uber, and Airbnb will face a 3% levy on revenue generated from Canadian users, applied retroactively. U.S. companies alone could be on the hook for a $2 billion bill by the end of the month. Trump's fiery post declared, "Based on this egregious tax, we are hereby terminating all discussions on trade with Canada, effective immediately. We will let Canada know the tariff that they will be paying to do business with the United States of America within the next 7-day period." This move marks a sharp escalation in the second-term president's renewed trade war efforts and throws ongoing U.S.-Canada negotiations into chaos. Tensions had already been rising after a tumultuous G7 summit in Alberta, where both sides agreed to a 30-day deadline for a new trade framework. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney responded with caution, stating that his government would continue the negotiations in the best interests of Canadians, while defending the country's right to implement domestic tax policy. Despite Trump's aggressive tone, he hinted Canada could still have a way back to the table if it scraps the tax. It doesn't matter to me," Trump said from the Oval Office. "Economically, we have such power over Canada. We'd rather not use it. But it's not going to work out well for them. They were foolish to do it." The digital services tax has long been a sore point for Washington, as it specifically impacts American tech firms. Although the legislation was passed a year ago, Trump chose to respond forcefully just days before its official implementation, injecting further volatility into trade relations. Industry groups like the Computer and Communications Industry Association welcomed the administration's hardline approach, calling Canada's tax discriminatory against U.S. digital exports. Meanwhile, broader trade tensions persist. The Trump administration has imposed 50% tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum, 25% tariffs on autos, and a 10% tax on most imports, with potential increases looming after July 9th when the president's 90-day negotiation window expires. Some of these tariffs, particularly those related to fentanyl smuggling, bypass protections under the 2020 U.S.-Mexico-Canada Agreement, complicating trade further. Behind the scenes, U.S. officials are preparing to notify various countries of updated tariff rates. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, when pressed for comments on the Canadian trade talks, deflected after a private meeting with Senate Republicans, simply saying, "I was in the meeting," before moving on. The fallout from this decision could be massive. Canada supplies around 60% of America's crude oil imports and 85% of its electricity imports. It's also the top foreign provider of steel, aluminum, and uranium to the U.S., along with 34 critical minerals the Pentagon deems vital to national security. With 80% of Canadian exports destined for the U.S., economic experts say both countries stand to lose if trade ties continue to unravel. Daniel Bayland, a political science professor at McGill University, pointed out that while the tax is a domestic policy measure, it has long been a source of friction. The Digital Services Tax Act was signed into law a year ago, he said. Yet President Trump waited just before its implementation to create drama over it in the context of ongoing and highly uncertain trade negotiations between the two countries. As of now, the standoff shows no sign of resolution, and the future of North American trade remains in limbo.